Welcome to another cultural diversity gathering. We are so thankful that you are all here. Those of you that are here in person, those of you that have joined us virtually. For those of you in the room, please remember to sign in. We're very thankful that we get to capture this and also give you some credits for attending. So if you need it for one of your educational programs, you can say, Judy will send you an email confirming that you did attend this session and you can use it. And so thank you for being here. The purpose of our gathering, as you know, is to connect, to learn, to grow, to develop together. And so that is why we gather. I learn a new thing every single time that we are here. And I take those things that I learn and I apply them. And so that is the purpose of us coming together. We always want to do everything from our North Star, which is our vision statement, our mission statement, our values. So everything we do starts with heart. It's our vision to be one team, to be inclusive, to listen, to show that we care, to do the right thing every single time. That is why we are here. And we always want to make a difference every day. Our values, we want to show that we want to have trust, we want to have respect, compassion. We want to think about our communities while serving with exceptional excellence in everything that we do. So that's why we are here. As we continue our journey of learning, growing, connecting, developing, we have a system-wide health equity governance team, and we take our work seriously. Thankful for all of our leadership that's involved with that. And we have our cultural champions. Some of them are in the room. We want more cultural champions. Judy Blair is one of our cultural champions, and thank you for all you do, Judy. Doug is at the back. He never likes me acknowledging him, but I will. He comes early to greet and to make sure that people feel welcomed and they're seen and they're heard and they're valued. Dylan is not on our cultural champion team, but he shows up every single time. We have IT support. Melissa, who shows up, and when she walks in is when I remember, oh yeah, we need someone to take pictures. Thank you for being part of our team. And for others that I might have missed, we thank you and we want more cultural champions. The process to apply is right up there, and you can check our cultural diversity SharePoint page and you'll see it. I want to say, Ashley, you're listening to this. Ashley Yonkin creates our PowerPoint. She's on our health equity team and our cultural champions. We need to add that we were one of the top 3 hospitals recognized across the country for our initiatives and our work in the diversity equity space. So we are making a difference, and we will add that slide next time. We were just recognized on Monday, and today is Thursday. So we're very thankful for what we do. We put the personal commitment, I put that together in the midst of COVID when there were lots of conflicts. How many of you remember that? Is COVID real? Is COVID not real? Was it made in a lab? Was it not made in a lab? Do I wear a mask? Do I not wear a mask? Do I like you? Do I not like you? I mean, it just got really bad. So I sat down one day and I wrote this personal commitment that we use on all of our presentations. I will commit to opening my mind to learning a new way of looking at things. I will commit to suspending the internal dialogue and debate that occurs when information is being presented. I will commit to leaving this presentation with information and techniques I can apply. I will commit to using the acronym THINK, T-H-I-N-K, before I speak. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And if it doesn't pass those 5 questions, then we ought to rephrase it until it can pass. And then we can then say, you know what, I did think before I spoke. So I'm so thankful to have our speaker here. How many of you have heard her at Monument Health before? She is a pastor, she's an author, she's a speaker, she's a consultant, she is a survivor. I want us to give a round of applause for her coming back and for all that she does. Let's welcome Kelly Patterson. Thank you for being here with us again and for all that you do. You are an inspiration and you are a blessing. So you were trafficked in the heartland. You were trafficked in the heartland. What does that mean?
Well, a lot of people have seen Sound of Freedom. So I'm going to reference that movie that's just come out. And if you were to take the life of the children that were portrayed in that film, it would be similar to what I went through. However, you would need to take it times, another 20 years or add another 20. Because I think their total time for the female was around 2 years. I was brought into this and groomed for trafficking at a very early age. But what I'd like to do is give you a definition. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
All right. It's any sexual act or performance done in exchange for any item of value, such as money, drugs, shelter, food, or clothes, and that all qualifies as a sex trafficking act when force, fraud, or coercion are present, or if the person is under 18.
Thank you for that definition of trafficking, sex trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
So help us understand, are there different types of trafficking?
Yes, and I like to narrow it down to what we see most commonly in the Midwest or the Heartland. And because who the Midwest is changes every so often. And I think now we're Heartland and not Midwest, but I'm not sure. So Romeo pimps, we see a lot in domestic violence, and oftentimes it's confused with that, or it's interchanged with that. And that is where someone comes in and they just sweep the girl, usually a teenager between the ages of 12 and 14, off of her feet, romance her, and slowly begin to pull her away from her family and her friends. And once they have her alone, they then begin to pimp her out and beat her if she doesn't comply. We see a lot of that. Then we have gang and motorcycle club, that would be street gangs, motorcycle clubs, only certain ones that are involved in that. And they can be very brutal in how they get this person involved. It may be male or female that is being trafficked. And familial trafficking is I think about 60% now of what they find in trafficking nationwide. And that is when family members traffic out their child. It may be trading with just another family, but that means they're still gaining something because they're gaining access to another child. So it is trafficking in that sense also. And then what we are seeing a lot of is familial trafficking, and all of these different forms are intercrossing with ring trafficking. And ring trafficking is organized crime rings, and we see them everywhere now. And actually the familial trafficking has begun to form rings, and they have begun to work with organized crime, making it so much more dangerous and much more difficult to get them out. In the past, it might be a CPS case, and we would be looking at child sexual abuse, uncover some trafficking. Now, because of rings being involved, it's getting harder to uncover.
And we do this topic every July because we have the rally that comes up in August, and hundreds of thousands of people come into our city. And there are, we do know that there's an increase in sexual situations, sex trafficking and all of that. And we want our community to be aware. We want our caregivers to be aware. We want us to our radars up so that we can be a safe space and protect and bring people into the hospital who might need help. Does that make sense? Or when we see them in the hospital, we want to be able to figure out ways to separate them from the people who are the perpetrators so that we can get them the help that they need. So every July we do this, and thank you. We've partnered with you through your organization. We had Gina last year, and thank you for all that education that we get. So let's expound a little bit on the ring trafficking.
Okay, and so I had written up a definition. It's my own definition. It's organized crime rings specifically linked to all forms of commercial sexual exploitation and sex trafficking, highly coordinated and interconnected with other criminal organizations. And so what you want to think of there, and yes, it's in South Dakota, is like Epstein Island. It's very much the elite pedophile rings, And they are trafficking and they are very active in the state of South Dakota and for decades. For decades they've been here.
Can we wrap our minds around that? No, people are like, no, well, when she starts to tell you her story, you'll begin to be able to wrap your minds around it. So who is this?
Looks like my granddaughter, but it's me. I have a granddaughter that looks a lot like that, so I've realized I'm darn cute. So that was before anything that I remembered anyway. And I see a sparkle in my eyes in that picture. And a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I really believe that that is true. You see a smile and an innocence in those eyes and in that face. But that innocence was stolen not much longer after this. I have memories as early as age 4.
They say the eyes are the window to the soul, and you're right. The innocence, the joy, life is in, you can see those in the eyes. So tell us a little bit more about how we, your experiences and how we have to listen and how we have to observe.
Yeah. And that's really important because my parents had no idea that this was happening to me, but I was being groomed by a neighbor that was actually a very close friend of the family. I was also being groomed by a family relative. And I don't know if he was connected with the ring or if he just saw signs in me. Because, once you begin to be abused, other abusers pick up on that signal and your vulnerabilities. But this neighbor started out as such a great guy and to this day is loved, well-known, respected, statewide. I hate to say that, he's alive still, but he's pretty darn old. There are reasons he's not arrested.
Okay, there are reasons he's not arrested.
Yeah, there are. And
Can you share?
Well, I could share it briefly so that we don't take a lot of time.
And as you share, I'll go back to your picture so
Sure.
that people focus on that, on what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Imagine this person approaching that little girl a year later, about a year and a half later, and being just the friend and the nice guy, and my parents trusting him, and I spent the night there. He had a daughter my age, but eventually that turned. But it turned so slowly, and when it began with very simple molestation, I didn't know what that was. He was such a good guy. I was his favorite child in the whole city as far as I understood. And that meant a lot to me too, because I just had some self-esteem issues. So having that favor was important to me, but I also didn't know that what was happening was wrong. And I was taught to respect my elders. And back then you weren't being taught good touch, bad touch. I honestly didn't know what was going on, or, I'd seen doctors. Maybe this is what doctors, maybe all adults do this. So it's very confusing for a child.
You had seen doctors and maybe all adults do this. What does that mean?
So I had seen a doctor check my mom out when I was very little. And I asked my mom about it. And I've never told this before, but she had said, he's a doctor, it's okay. And so that put something in me subtly that I didn't understand. And at that age, you don't know to separate one adult from another. Doctor, dentist, lawyer, I don't know. What's the difference? They're in a suit and they're respected. And so I think that brought some confusion as well, and just something to be aware of. I'm kind of glad you asked that question. And lost my place, but.
Well, so you didn't know good touch, bad touch. You had seen a doctor examine your mom, and he was nice and respected in the community. And that began that journey of, it was your introduction into that journey, that life of being trafficked, being molested.
And at age 6 is when it turned really ugly. At age 6, he introduced me to a room. He took me to a building with a room full of men sitting in a circle. And this is always hard to tell. It doesn't matter how many times I tell it. And I recognize in me, there's still a bit of that little girl feeling that embarrassment of that moment because I was undressed, they were all dressed, and they passed me around the room, taking
I'm sorry,
turns.
they were dressed and you were undressed?
Yes. And so you're the only one with no clothing on, which is an immediate shaming instant, and it overtakes you, and you don't know how to act, and then they pass you around molesting you. And then I was put back on the lap of the neighbor and facing all of them. When they began to share with me, you will never tell anyone about us and what we are doing here. And you're going to show up whenever we give you this certain signal, you will show up at this building. And then they said, you have a propane tank in your backyard. If you don't show up, we will blow that up. We'll take out your whole city block. By the way, he was no longer a neighbor. We had moved in and out of town once, and we were on a different part of town. So he wasn't afraid of blowing up his own house. And I understood that sitting there, that this is something he could do. And then they said something that was really, really difficult for me. I had prayed my little sister into the world. My mom still doesn't know how she got here. And she said she's the second immaculate conception. But because her and my brother are only 10 months apart. And but here come my baby sister, and she was the world to me. And they used her by saying her name and telling me, if you don't show up, we will take your baby sister. And we will do to her what we've done to you. And there was no way I was going to allow that to happen. And then their final blow was to say, and besides, we can't help ourselves. You're too sexy. 6-year-old child is not sexy. But see, this was a room full of adults. One of them was a judge, and I knew this. I didn't know what a judge was, but I knew he was referred to as judge, and I knew that that was important. And hearing that from a room full of adults that were respected, I immediately took that as, this is my fault. Somehow the blame is on me. And so the shame came on me at the same time.
I want to hear from about 3-4 of you, one word, how this makes you feel so far. I heard you whispered it. You want to say that loudly? You in the pink?
This makes you feel sick.
Sick. Any other word?
Crushed.
Crushed. Another word?
Heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking. One more word?
Angry.
Angry? Very angry. And we could go on and on and on. And that's why we do this, because we want to bring that awareness that there are people that are evil. And we cannot live in our healthcare space not being aware of that. We know there are people that are evil, those who touch patients, clinical people, they see all sorts of things, gunshot wounds and knife stabbings and all of sorts, but this is a wound that you don't immediately see, it's not tangible right away without certain tests being performed. Hence why we ask you, and thank you, because I've heard you share multiple times, but it's still the same effect each time. It just grips my heart and I get very angry, in addition to sick and disgusted and all of those things. So thank you for sharing. Please continue.
Thank you. And it's important to note right here that it's not just my story. When I share my story, I'm sharing the story of thousands and thousands and thousands of others, because ring trafficking is so big and it is so difficult to catch and to control. And so this is a good place to mention a few things that you can do if you're wondering about your children, your grandchildren, a neighbor, a child that you know. It's important to pay attention to who don't they want to see. One of my cousins mentioned she had noticed that I began to change from a very flamboyant, open, friendly child to shying away from big groups. And she wasn't able to piece together what it was about the big groups, but she now understands. She actually was worried as we got older that perhaps I was coming up with some sort of a mental disorder because she didn't know what was happening to me, but she saw this change. Where don't they want to go? Is an adult showing too much attention? Has their behavior or attitude changed in any way? And see, it could be the opposite. I'm thinking of one survivor that I know who has histrionic disorder, and it's a result of what's happened to her. And so she's very loud because she never had a voice, and she acts out everything she's feeling and thinking. And as we've worked with her, we've seen that dissipate. A lot of mental disorders are actually not disorders. They are a symptom and an acting out of something that simply needs healing. And that's important to remember as well. And then lastly on this list, does an adult have private, unsupervised access to your child? This is where, and I just was talking with a coach this week. A coach is a great example. No coach should ever want to have alone time with a child. If they do, and if they get angry when a parent says, I won't allow that, then I would say, what's wrong with that coach? And it may be their pride, but it's not worth chancing it to push past that. And this coach assured me, he said, all of our coaches make sure there's always two of us. It's wisdom on the coach's part, or anything else they might be doing, a volunteer. Big brother, big sister is becoming a thing we've got to watch for. So it's just, you don't want an adult to be grooming them unaware. And I'm sorry because this really breaks and destroys Mr. Rogers' neighborhood in a lot of ways. And I hate doing that, but I hope also seeing me here well and mostly healed also brings hope.
It brings a lot of hope. And I know in addition to what we do within the healthcare space, there are mothers and fathers in this room, grandparents in this room, aunties and cousins who are going through a checklist in their head to make sure that they're not missing anything with their loved ones. Tell us about the average lifespan.
Well, and I can really relate to the average lifespan of a victim of commercial sexual exploitation is reported to be 7 years. And I can speak to that from my own life. It was very, at age 6, I'm introduced to the ring, and at that point, everything escalated. I would have to show up there, and I have no way of knowing how many times per week, or if it was once a week, or if it was once a month. I have no idea. But I would have to show up to be schooled, and that was being trained for commercial sexual exploits. And because of that, in a sense, you could almost say that I was already being turned out, but I'll explain being turned out later in a much bigger way. However, I'm being forced to commit sexual acts, and by age 9, they had me in porn films and in porn magazines, 9 years old. And again, this isn't just my story. So you can imagine the damage this does to your body emotionally. Physically, they're very careful in the elite rings because they are grooming a product. It's like raising a crop that they're going to continue to use over and over for years and years. Their hope is decades. And they're waiting for that crop to age out of the family home or run away. They never lose track of you. And then they've got you 24/7. So as I saw one person report one time, ring traffickers are very, very patient. And I would agree with that. It's a very sick kind of patience. And all that while, they are still trafficking you out. I think it was age 11, I'd have to look back. I was actually with a presidential candidate as a sexual partner. So age 9, when you're in films, I was already in full-blown sex acts with adults.
Are any of these people in jail?
Some are dead. Most are dead. A couple went to jail, but not for this.
Do we have questions in the room before she goes on? Yes.
Are they dead by natural causes?
Some. I do know one that was murdered and found literally shot to death in a car over the border in Mexico. Now, these are not going to be your upper elite ones, so that's a really great question. The ones who get caught are going to be their runners, their handlers. And this is a great place to say this. I have met with a very, very top CIA person who got all of the information together for Epstein. And he knows my case. We've met several times. Certain people have all the names in safes or vaults, but he knows who the head trafficker of the ring over the United States was at that time, who happened to end up personally handling me after age 17 on, from 17 to 22. He was an international guy. He was connected internationally. He was from the United States. And he said, I took Epstein down with ease compared to your guy. He said, I still cannot get him. So that gives you the level of trafficking that is in the state of South Dakota. And there is a reason I don't say a lot more, because I want to stay alive to do what I do. And because they told me very straight up, FBI and CIA, we can't take your guy down, nor the organization. There is no point in you naming them, because you would then have to have 24/7 people watching over your security, over your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren for generations to come, plus over myself. Now, I don't worry about myself, but the family, you can put yourself in my shoes. And of course I am concerned about that. Would I love to name names and take people down? Absolutely. But is it wisdom? No, it's not. Then I wouldn't be able to do what I do and expose this, because the more I expose this, see, they said to me something very important. You are able to save more lives this way than by taking down that person. And that stuck. So we'll go back to the 7 years, because I know it's kind of a, I rabbit trail well, but I always come back. So by age 12 and a half, almost 13, I exercised my right to say no and not show up when they gave me the signal. That meant they executed an extreme punishment, which I was not expecting, which was a very, very brutal gang rape. Something my mother remembered right up until she passed away in September. And oh, I miss her.
How does she remember? What did
She
say?
remembers me coming home, and so some of it I is in the book, and it's too hard to speak verbally. But because I said some things to her that really, she said, why didn't I ask more questions? But back then, she had no reason to suspect anything. I was her most honest child. I told on myself and got in trouble, you know? And so because of that honesty, she wouldn't expect I was hiding anything. And I was bleeding from head to foot. And my glasses were broke. I mean, everything was ripped, and, you know, and I had cuts and bruises everywhere. I didn't let her see the worst of them. And I told her I'd been in a very bad bicycle wreck. And to make sure that looked true, I had thrown my bicycle down in the backyard multiple times to scar it up, which was really hard because that was my prized possession. But I had to come up with a story to protect my family. And she was really sad that she didn't ask more, but I explained to her, why would you? You know, why would you ask more when I'm honest and it looked like a bike wreck? But that was 7 years. And I began to get very, very ill. A lot of my childhood, I had been, in fact, my first time of getting sick was right after being introduced to the ring at age 6. I landed in the hospital for 2 weeks. Very, very
No one
sick.
could figure it out.
No, no. And they called me sickly from then on because I was just always, I caught anything and everything because my immune system was being destroyed by what was happening to me internally. And when you keep that inside, it's got to go somewhere. So it went into my body. And I fight a lot of health issues today because of that as well. But by age 13, I had fallen apart physically. I was so sick. I was home a good share off and on of my 8th grade year. They followed up the first gang rape with another gang rape. And I was just destroyed and shamed and sick. And then I began to be bullied because a rumor was put around town that I had done this willingly.
So people in the town then knew that you were being raped?
That there was a gang rape. They knew about a gang rape because there were a few high school boys there. I watched people pay to come in. And there was a ring trafficker present that I had seen with the ring. And rumors got around. It's a small community in South Dakota, very small. And the rumor was, that it was something I willingly wanted to do. So the bullying started, which also began to kill me internally. That caused my parents to move, though. This is the 7-year mark where I believe I would have died had we stayed there. We moved, oddly, to a reservation in South Dakota, and on that reservation, for some reason, the ring traffickers either were not there or they understood the 7-year mark. I'm learning that they know a lot more than we realize and that they have written books on this subject matter, on how to groom, how to train a slave. Unfortunately, those have been around even since slavery was here. Mm-hmm. Someone wrote a book, I can't remember his name, and from there, books have been written to continue that work. It's awful. And for whatever reason, I had a 3-year reprieve. And I believe that saved my life. And I believe that's why I'm here today. I believe it was our God. I'm a pastor.
Yeah. So tell us about this photo.
So there, what you stated earlier, the eye is the window to the soul. I very much believe that. And looking in the eyes is something I do. I'm looking to see who's in there. This is a picture of me just after my junior year, right before my senior year. It's my senior picture. We moved from the reservation to Michigan, where I thought I'd had 3-year reprieve, so I actually thought it was done. Somewhere inside, I thought perhaps they just wanted younger children. And so moving to Michigan seemed like a great idea. And you can see again, a sparkle has returned. I couldn't find any good pictures, plus who wants to see that many of me in between? I'm sure I could find one. So we moved to Michigan to this beautiful, beautiful beach that you see in the picture that is actually taken in the backyard behind where we lived. And it's not Lake Michigan, it was a lake nearby called Wolf Lake, interesting name. And you can see how lovely it is. And I was excited because I loved water and I was an avid swimmer. My brother remembers this, by the way. Since I saw you last, my brother decided to read the book. And it about killed him to read it. We're a bit closer in age, and he has a lot of memories. More than anyone can imagine. Actually, I was shocked. He was able to fill in so many blanks. Very helpful because you block so much and you have pieces and you don't trust yourself. And when someone can come along and confirm what you remember, it's so helpful. And I've had more confirming and affirmations than most people will ever get. And I think it's so that I can do this work with confidence. But on that beautiful beach, we were in it the very next day, my brother says, and that's what I thought. So it was the very next day. We pulled in the evening, and the next day, my brother, my sister, and I, and 2 young girls we had just met about our age, We were all in the water splashing around when we heard the name Kelly echo across Wolf Lake. It's a sizable lake, and we could tell it was coming from this other side of the lake. And we heard it several times. And we all looked at each other, and I said, well, it can't be me. And my brother said, yeah, because nobody knows you here. And I said, that's right. And so I wasn't worried. You know, I thought it's got to be another Kelly on the lake. When he said it was about 20 minutes later, I knew it was soon. 2 guys came jogging down the beach, stopped right beside me, and they said, hello, Kelly. And my heart sunk. I did get physically sick, and I went in the house because I knew then something bad was coming.
They had found you.
Yep. And you can see the next photo is me after that news. And you can see so many things. In fact, I don't know, maybe tell me what you see.
What do you see? Let's engage the audience. We want 3, 4 people to shout out what you see.
There's no smile.
No smile,
The eyes look blank.
the eyes look blank.
Got a tan.
Say what?
You got a tan.
She has a tan. Eyes look blank, look sad. What else do we see?
Fear.
Fear.
Yes.
What else do we see?
Someone said terrified.
Pardon?
Someone said terrified.
Terrified.
Insecurity.
Insecurity. What else do we see? I see disbelief, like I can't believe this is happening again. Like, you know, it's like, yeah, her eyes say a lot. What else do we see?
How soon was this picture taken about after you moved?
Question for the sake of those on WebEx, how soon was the picture taken after she moved?
And that I don't know, but I would say, well, it was pretty soon because it's actually in the picture with those same girls. I would say, could have been that same day. I always was that dark in the summer, by the way. Could have been the same day, could have been a week later. I honestly don't know, but very
Definitely
soon.
Within the first month of being
Yeah,
there.
oh, yes, yes,
I see disassociation.
Yes.
yes,
Like you're there, but you're not there.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm impressed with,
The eyes are the window to the soul, and we can see a whole lot. But oftentimes, isn't it often that we see it after the fact? Because when you're right there, right, your parents are right there, your loving parents, your siblings. But oftentimes, we live our lives forward, we understand it backwards, looking at pictures and things like that.
yeah, exactly.
So, they yelled out Kelly. And what happened next?
They showed up, I believe, that evening.
The same day.
I believe it was. It could have been the next day, but it was in the evening, and they showed up at my window. And my window faced that beach. And we didn't have an air conditioner, so it was a screen. And they said my name. And of course, I was jarred too. I already wasn't sleeping anyway at that point. And they told me that whenever we come to this window, you're going to leave with us. And this is where I was truly turned out by the ring. Clearly, the ring had sent these guys. They were connected. By the way, my dad worked for the government, and I'll let your mind take you where it may. We have figured a lot of things out about that as well. But there are ways to keep track of individuals, even if you don't work for the government, your social security number. But also that main trafficker, the initial one, was friends with my parents. They remained friends, you know, forever. So did he always know where I was? Absolutely. Being turned out means that they begin to utilize your skills, the skills they have trained you in. And so that can include all of these things, private party entertainment, strip clubs or exotic dance, escort services, prostitution, pornography, and they began to utilize me in all of that right there in Michigan at age 17. Horrible summer, and it changed me for a very long time. I remember standing in that water and yelling at God. I was out there by myself because I knew there was a God. And I believed that there was, but I believed he didn't love me. And by the way, any songs from that particular summer I hate. And I never could understand that. You know, I didn't make the connection for a long time. It's like I can't stand Barry Manilow. Isn't that sad? But, you know, and I've decided not to reclaim that. But things that you don't even connect that later, like you said, looking back, makes sense. You can imagine, and who they had handling me there was a motorcycle club. And they were a 1%er club out of Detroit, Michigan that had a clubhouse there. I went back to visit this same city, by the way, because coincidentally, they found me on a speaker site that I didn't even know I was on. And it doesn't even exist anymore. And the city of Muskegon, Michigan contacted me to ask if I would come speak, having no idea I'd been trafficked in their city. So that's much more than a coincidence, I believe. Well, guess what? There was people in the audience who were survivors who had lived on Wolf Lake. When I shared this experience, they immediately grabbed me afterwards. We grabbed law enforcement that was in the room and said, it's still happening today. If your name is echoed across the lake, you're being prostituted.
So why is it that we don't have officers just kind of hang around, you know? Because would it be echoed across the lake during the daytime or towards evening or, you know, maybe I'm thinking of this. I'm trying to picture some of the questions that people might have in the room. But why don't they have people who are a little bit more, you know, plainclothes policemen waiting to hear, you know, Julie echoed across the room or Mary, you know, and echoed across the water and then kind of pay attention for who are the Marys around?
Well, I hope they're doing that now. I would say this, when I shared that, no one in that room had ever heard of that, except for the survivors that spoke up. And that is one of the problems we have. The survivors don't trust law enforcement. They don't trust their own mind, and they won't trust you. They don't know who to trust. And if you don't trust your own mind and you don't trust authorities, silence is what happens. And it wasn't until I said that, and then she actually texted her mother, who had also been trafficked there, and her mother said it happened when she was there. So this had been a multi-generational situation on that lake of ring trafficking, and no one had caught on. Now, my understanding was that law enforcement was going to begin to look into this. I did contact the task force down there about a year ago to ask them, and they had no knowledge of what was going on, and they were going to look into it. And I should check back into that.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the silence. And how many of you begin to think about it as it pertains to you personally and professionally? When you were 6, you had a judge in the room, someone that you knew they were calling judge. So how hard would it then be when you're older to go, who can I trust? Because if there's a judge and there's maybe a cop in this, so by the time a person is at the 7-year mark, there's no one for them to trust. They realize, and maybe that's part of what happens, right? There's no one to trust. Who do you trust? Who do you run to? Who do you go to?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and anytime I thought I could trust someone, like I went to a dentist and I was so proud of myself going to the dentist by myself. And the dentist and his, I don't know what she's called, his assistant, were members of the ring. And so while my tooth is being worked on without any kind of numbing, they're doing things. And you can imagine how that breaks the soul. You can understand why dissociation happens. Your body and your mind have to separate in order to survive. I consider dissociation an incredible gift to children, and I'm grateful that it exists. And I'm grateful that I don't have to remember every single incident.
Can you explain what that is?
So dissociation, well, I'm trying to think of a good explanation. You know what? I have one. You know, and we'll just skip that slide later. Dissociation due to trauma is a common response to trauma. It's a mental process.
I can go over to that slide. I
Oh,
just
sure.
wanted to make sure that you were talking about it and you didn't miss it.
Well, I appreciate it. When we're on it, let's hit it. Dissociation due to trauma is a common response to trauma. Common. I want that to stand out. It's a mental process of disconnecting from one's thoughts, feelings, memories, body, or sense of identity from the current reality. The current is too difficult to face. You have to do something to escape it. You hear people talk about leaving their body as well. I have had that happen before.
So how did you escape? Let's go back to that. And we're going to fast forward a little bit.
We
because
should.
we are
Yeah.
running out of time. How did you escape?
How did I escape? And that is still intrigues me to this day, as well as the CIA and FBI. So after we had moved back to South Dakota and I was trafficked and I had 2 law enforcement that were handlers. So there again, law enforcement was my enemy. I mean, it was just nonstop. After 5 years of that and being used in all those ways, and after losing 3 babies, I was just so done until someone looked in my eyes. And that's back to the eyes are the window to the soul and why I look in people's eyes. And I just heard that someone else gave a similar story, a survivor. So it's kind of a unique thing, but maybe it isn't. I thought it was. But this person looked me in the eyes when I was feeling not like a human, because you do not feel like a human. You're your body, but you're not a human. And a person looked me in the eyes and I saw that they saw a person. And they looked at me like they hurt for me. And that compassion coming out of someone's eyes gave me the hope and the willpower. I'd tried multiple escapes. And every time landed me in a situation of torture, which is also common. There's 48 common forms of torture used in trafficking. And torture is something you want to avoid at all costs, but I had given up escaping because of it until that person saw a human again. And it gave me that last hope, which happened to be the one that helped me to escape. That picture is the reason I'm dressed like that. It was my cousin's wedding. I would not have known that was the date of my escape, except that my cousin remembers it very well because my car was packed and loaded and I was headed for Oregon. She was really angry at me because she thought I was going there to seek after drugs. She had no idea that I was just fleeing. And she told me that in tears and gave me that picture. That picture was the escape day. And there was some crazy people in a commune that surrounded me, long story short, after seeing me followed in Oregon. And they said, we're no longer letting you go anywhere alone, not to work, not on a bus, not to a gas station, not to a grocery store. Someone's always going to be with you. That's what saved my life.
These were strangers.
Yes, they took me in. I was homeless. Yeah.
Wow. Tell us more. And as you tell us more, I'm going to take a couple pictures so when you see me of the audience.
Okay.
So we can use it in our reports. Sit right there, Melissa. All right. Go on. Tell us about that.
So escaping is huge. Only 1% of sex trafficking victims ever escape. That means 99% die while in that life. That is worse than any war that we fight. And I think that number needs to speak to the world. We were hoping to climb towards 2%. It looked like we were, and the number has not budged. So we're still under 2% escaping alive. I think it climbed a little because of the advent of organizations like ours, Treasured Lives, and the other organizations that help with escapes. I'm trying to think where to go from there. Do you want to go to those?
Let's go. Let's talk about
Okay.
those real quickly.
All right, quickly, and you can look these up online. Tattooing is super common. In fact, the barcode on one person there is someone I know, and the one that has King Munch is someone I know. These are survivor leaders in the United States, actually. But these are very common if it has anything to do with money, diamonds, crowns. The barcode is becoming less common because it's so obvious.
I've seen someone with a diamond on their chest before. Do you think other people do that, or is it just specific?
I'm glad you asked that too, because I love diamonds. And, it is possible that somebody just loves diamonds. So when you're looking, you don't just look at the tattoo, you are looking at everything. You have to take it all into consideration. However, if you see a crown with a name, you can be certain. If you see a money bag, or I've seen tattoos, bring home the money, ho. Things like that. Dollar signs, you can be certain, dollar signs, they're being trafficked. The one in the center bottom is gang numbers. I don't know what the numbers mean, but all street gangs have numbers. And they recognize them as, oh, she belongs to so-and-so. And oftentimes it'll say, property of. There again, being trafficked. The king crown is that the pimp or the trafficker, and these are usually pimp gang signs, by the way, rings do not put any marks on their people. They try not to even put scars where they can be seen. Because you, again, remember that they are being escorts. I've been escorts, if we want to call it that. I've been prostituted to, is a better way to say it, presidents of nations. And that may be the next slide, I can't recall. No, it's not. And then these are some signs which you are welcome to take a photo, but actually I can send you a few that you can share with everyone. Some
And
of
we
these.
have all of this on our cultural awareness SharePoint page.
Yes.
As soon as it's processed, it will be uploaded there, and it will also be in our iLearn, so you'll have access to it as well.
Awesome.
Yes.
And I have a QR code on the back table
Yes.
that goes to our website, because we have a lot of information on there, and we are constantly adding. We're in fact updating and adding a whole bunch of stuff in the next few weeks, so keep an eye on that as well. There's just so much that the more you talk, the more there is to share. And I know that I think we actually passed the slide with the map. Was that on there?
It was on there.
I wanted to just mention that briefly. That shows where I've been. You'll see a dotted line to Europe. The reason that one's dotted is until I have more evidence, we have some evidence. I put nothing on this map, and I actually didn't make this map. Someone made it for me, and I thought, what a great idea. And then it shocked me when I saw it.
You've been to all those places?
I've been trafficked in all those places. Out of South Dakota, brought back. Out of South Dakota, brought back. South Dakota was the hub. The head trafficker in the United States over this particular ring, which is a international ring, was in Minnesota. Still is. His successor is in Minnesota. This is important for us to know in this state. And I think that map speaks volumes. And again, Europe is dotted line. It's about 90% certain I was taken there. I have a lot of memories there, but I don't just count on memories. I want to get facts. South America, you can actually find my story on Google of how I was used with, I'm not going to say of which country, a president of a specific nation to blackmail 3 other nations by being filmed with the heads of state of those nations. The presidents, in one case, a king. Now that sounds bizarre, but we actually have evidence of it.
This is new, and so
Yes, it is.
I'm taking some of this in, and my brain is having a hard time processing the audacity some people have. Are some of you struggling with that?
Yeah.
That the audacity.
And it's not new, it's new to you. I didn't want to put it out there. I was afraid it would endanger my life. It's not in the book.
Oh, yeah, it's not new. Yeah, it's just, it's new to
It's
me,
new
it's
to
new to
you.
us.
Yes, and new to all of you. So it's probably is quite shocking. And yet, again, I'm not the only one. Out of little old backwoods, rural South Dakota, that's how we think. We think it's safe to not lock your doors at night, etc. Well, it is in a sense, because you see the perpetrators are not going to be some seedy guy in your back alley of ring trafficking. And remember that I am speaking very specific to ring trafficking. There are other forms that go on here all the time, and those look different.
Okay. Let's go on with some of the things.
Sorry about the shocker.
No, this is good. We read about this, we watch movies about this. To know someone who has survived it and can talk about it with the goal of changing lives, God bless you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll let you take it.
I'm having a hard time.
Well, you know what's weird? I get tears with no emotion. I'm like, why are you leaking? But I feel nothing. That's part of that dissociation still. You know, I always tell people I don't cry. I just don't. And unless something's cute. If a grandchild's cute, I cry. But my own stuff, I don't.
Let's go to medical signs. We have, I know, my eyes turn red too, so I'm like, now I got a tear coming down my face. Okay, let's go to medical signs of sex trafficking. We have 5 minutes.
Oh, boy. I'm glad you're getting copies of this.
Yes.
So, you know, I almost wonder, nope, I don't have it here, okay. Be sure you read over though, the first things that you're gonna encounter, because that is so important. But the medical signs might be, and especially with the rally coming, a lot of these are more blatant than they might be. Overdose, unexplained wounds, signs of rape, especially multiple rapes, lost, absent, confused look like you saw in my picture. Extreme exhaustion, that's a big one, a big one. Constipation, UTIs, STDs, ownership tattoos, maybe unbathed. We see a lot of that after Sturgis. Terror, PTSD, a person that won't leave their side. Now that one is very difficult. Someone that doesn't leave their side and comes in with them can also be someone protecting them from traffickers. And we have to often get help in there to make certain what kind of person that is. This is where you want to separate them from the person.
Yep.
And we've talked about that a lot. And your ER, by the way, I experienced some questions. I was so happy to hear them do, or it's ED now, right? Or,
Yes.
Yeah. And they asked me some questions that they just kind of had in their list, and I was happy to hear that. Even though I don't think they were really worried about me, I was glad. Please ask.
Yep.
Ask anybody.
Yep.
And they might think you're weird, but you can just say it's protocol. Because is anybody, you know, are you afraid of anyone? Da, da, da. But if you notice someone answering from them, the key is to get them separated from
Yep.
that person. Makeup, we need to take a urine test, and you can't come with. Whatever you have to do, separate. Yeah.
And you said that the first time you spoke here, and that has stayed with me. And many people have said that really helped to be able to find a reason to say, I need to take her down the hallway.
Yes.
To do some labs. I need to take her or take him. I need to, and you separate.
Absolutely. They're never going to talk if that person's in the room. They just won't.
So 9 practical things you can do to help, you know, combat trafficking. Let's talk about that real quickly, and then we'll have people ask questions.
All right. And that came as a result of the Sound of Freedom movie. And I will say this, I can't verify the story in that movie. Nobody can verify mine except, well, there are people that can.
Yeah.
But what I can verify is the story looked very true and very real. And the lost look in that little girl's eyes at the end of that film. But afterwards, people were left with, now what? And so as a result of that, we came up with 9 practical things that you can do to combat trafficking. Anyone can do something. First of all, get to know the signs. Now, of course, here in the medical field, it's even more important. Spread the word. Volunteer locally. We need everything. We have a list of what we need. I mean, lawyers, dentists, you name it. Stay informed. See something, say something, always proper. Give money to your local anti-trafficking org. I am a pastor and will not ever pass the offering or ask for money. I don't. It sits at the back. You can give if you want. But I will ask for money from every one of you. You can give $5 a month. You can give $20 a month. You can give 100. We need money to help these. We have 3 males and over, I think, 22 females right now in our organization that we're scrambling to house, to feed, to clothe, and the medicine, and just on and on and on, the things that we have to help with. It's a never-ending cycle of need, You are never doing wrong by giving to your local anti-trafficking organization. Support anti-trafficking legislation when it comes up, please. If you know it's coming up, contact your legislators and tell them to go for it. And we're gonna especially need that this year, I think, on a big one coming up. We'll try to, our Facebook page, by the way, has been kind of, I don't know what you call that, but it never will show up in your feed. You have to actively go find it. They've done that to us and other anti-trafficking organizations. Find it, will keep you up to date. Use your skills pro bono and attend advanced trainings. And we have one listed there, and pick up this card, and I'll make sure to get this to you as well.
And there's a QR code there. Ashley Yonkin, thank you for helping us create that. So that we can scan it and order her book. I did not acknowledge Linda, who helps ensure that we have everything situated in the room ready. Thank you for being here. I think I looked into your eyes and couldn't believe the level of pain and torture you had been through. And that broke me, because I've heard your story before and I've been able to keep it together. But just looking at what you've been through and how you are a survivor, and how with the comfort that you've been comforted by God in your situation, you've been able to comfort others.
Yes.
And that was, and so thank you for being here and for speaking, for pastoring, for helping our community, for being salt, for being light, for being a difference maker, for making a positive difference every day. And I looked in your eyes and I saw that little kid for a second. And that's what broke me. I was like, but thank God I pulled them together. I think my eyes are still red. So none of you talk to me afterwards. I'm joking. Do we have any questions for her? We are practically out of time. Yes.
How different does it look on the male side, if at all?
How different does it look on the male side for those of you on the chat?
Males are trafficked.
Absolutely. Do you mean during or once they escape?
Like signs and what you're looking for, how do they act a lot different? I mean, because you look at males who have been raped and that's not always the same. They don't always present the same way that a female does.
Yeah, the big difference that I have noticed is more anger. Males, I believe, and this is not across the board, but tend to cover up anxiety and sorrow with anger. And that is, I believe, trying to gain back their masculinity. And they have been brutalized, just like the females. And so to not feel like lesser than, to not feel like they're not a man, we often see that anger is much bigger. And sometimes, as a female, difficult for me to deal with. That's why we've brought male advocates on. What a blessing that's been, because they're able to really relate to that response, where sometimes anger in someone will trigger me to my own history. For these male advocates, they're able to just really understand. And that's been one of the most important steps we've made this year, is we've got 2 male advocates.
And I also heard during one of our sessions somewhere along the way, I don't know if it was Gina or an officer we had, say that when they come into the hospital, the exams they do for the women and the men, there's certain results that cue you into why does this person have certain infections, you know? And so that for the men, for the boys, a 7-year-old boy should not have an anal infection, or that, that's what they were saying, that there's certain things, and the clinical people in the room are nodding. So, that triggers a thought in the need to investigate and talk further. Certain sores and things like that based on the anatomy, there's certain things that should not be happening to a 7-year-old boy.
That's right.
Or an 8-year-old boy. So those are some of the things we can look out for in healthcare. Any other question from the chat? Let's make sure we don't forget the chat, folks.
There's a lot of thank yous in the chat, and I copied the chat because there's some that are very long, so.
Okay, so a lot of thank yous in the chat, and we'll get, so thank you. Final comments, we're a little bit over. Could we give her a round of applause? to come chit chat with her. Thank you so much.
Surprise. My son is